Yo, I'm Bob. Into Star Wars, happen to be totally blind since birth, talking about The Bad Batch, Season 3, Episode 6. This one's Infiltration. And it is the 38th episode of the show overall. It premiered today, March 13th of 2024. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, you might want to do that, or you're going to get spoiled. That being said, jumping right in, and you were warned. So, in this episode, we get to go back to Pantora. That's where we are as the episode opens. And it's very fitting because we get to see Senator Rio Chuchi again. She played pretty big role in the Clone Wars. We also saw her in Season 2 of The Bad Batch during that clone conspiracy duology. So I like that we're revisiting Pantora. We were last on Pantora in Season 1 of The Bad Batch. The episode was Cornered, I believe. That was the one in which Omega got to spend a little bit of time with Fennec Shan as she had gotten lost on Pantora. But we also saw Pantora in the episode Sphere of Influence from the Clone Wars. That was one of my favorite episodes. Got to get a bit of a look at the underworld in terms of Star Wars, the criminal underworld. That's always fun to get to see a little bit into the criminal underworld. We got to see Senator Chuchi before she showed up in Sphere of Influence, though. She showed up in Trespass. That was another good episode. And whenever she shows up on screen, nowadays, I'm always thinking, is this going to be the episode in which Chuchi is unalived? She's a cool character. I like what Jennifer Hale does with her voice. And I think my favorite scene in this episode, or one of them anyway, was where we get to see her meeting Senator Singh. And we saw Singh last in Season 1 of The Bad Batch. She was in, I think, Common Ground. So they're former separatists. And then you have Chuchi, who is still involved with the Republic, but they're meeting behind Palpatine's back. They are trying to come together and figure out how in the world they are supposed to resist the Emperor and his schemes. And scenes like this always make me think of the deleted scenes from the Revenge of the Sith DVD, which I really need to dust off. Some of my favorites were those in which Padme met with Mon Mothma and Bail. Yeah, when they do scenes like that in The Bad Batch, I really love that. That was, of course, my laptop trying to throw his 2 cents in. I wish he wouldn't do that as I'm filming this video. So, of course, you've got Palpatine and other Imperials who are wise to what certain senators are doing. And they have dispatched another shadow trooper, or just shadows if you want to call them that instead. That's what they call them in this episode. And these clones are quite creepy. They've got voice filters, so they sound less human, they actually sound a bit more robotic, which goes hand in hand with their brainwashing, I would imagine. Their numbers have been erased. I think their memories could quite possibly have been altered. We don't really know what goes into the enrollment process, as I like to call it, but we did see Crosshair have to endure a little bit of that in Season 2 of The Bad Batch. So you've got one of those guys. He shows up on Pantora, and you've got Rex and some other clones there as well. Thank goodness they're there, because the unaliving attempt by this shadow operative, this mysterious clone, is thwarted. And he is taken to Teth, of all places. We get to revisit Teth in The Bad Batch. So if you've seen the Clone Wars, and if you haven't, I would advise you to watch it. It's a fantastic animated series. The first time we got to see Teth was in the 2008 film. And we saw it again in the episode Hunt for Zero. It's one of my favorite locations because I really like the Bomar monks, or the Bomar monks as we should call them. I think the name has been pronounced both ways. And when we see Teth again, they are, I do believe it's in the same monastery that Ahsoka, Anakin, and their clone squad had to infiltrate. There's that infiltration word again. So we've kind of come full circle. We are back in the same monastery. I think it's the same one. The audio description says they're far above the jungle, so I'm guessing they're on that cliff. I think they had to scale a cliff to get up to the monastery there in the ATTEs in the film. But I love this location. We also got to see poor Zero being unalived by Sice Noodles on Teth. Not the same location. But, you know, we've seen Teth a few times. And I like that you get to see a bit of Rex. You know, he's not with the batch, but we get to see where he is, what he's up to. We don't really get to see the batch until I would say at least 15 or so minutes into the episode. It's a pretty good bit without the batch, but of course the story does incorporate them because this is their show. And as they are trying to get information out of the prisoner, they realize that, oh, well, you know, we need to see what the batch knows. They've had to deal with another clone on Coruscant before. So, you know, and this guy's after Omega. So, of course, you know, this is someone that Royce has dispatched to try to reclaim Omega. So, of course, this is going to involve the batch. And I like how they show up on Teth, because Wrecker, and he does this thing where he's like, yeah, they don't seem happy to see us. It's just like old times. And he just starts laughing, as Wrecker tends to do in situations like this. So we get to see Hauser and Crosshair interacting. And we last saw these two at odds in the little Ryloth duology back in season 1, where we got to see a very young Hera and Omega teaming up in that little duology. So I like that Crosshair is in another situation where he's got to prove himself yet again. You know, he's no longer with the Empire, but here's another clone who's reminding him of what he's done. You know, he has made choices in the past, and now he's got to face up to what he's done. But I like that eventually in this duology, Hauser does help the guy out. But as they, well, let's say they reunite, it's not going so well. You know, you've got Hauser who doesn't trust Crosshair at all. He wants to know just how in the heck he escaped. Then you've got the unnamed operative. You know, when he wakes up, he starts throwing a bit of shade at Crosshair, implicating him in the things that he's done, because he's trying to sow distrust among the clones. So I like that little scene there. And I forgot to mention, before the operative wakes up, they do extract his, let's call it his unaliving shocker. We first saw this little device in The Mandalorian chapter 11. And I like that it's implanted in a user's tooth. So that makes me think of the poison gas tooth from Dune. I'm thinking of the David Lynch version. Of course, it's in the Dune remake, which I like a whole heck of a lot. But when I first saw, you know, something that was implanted in a tooth, it was definitely the David Lynch version of Dune. So yeah, when they're mentioning, oh, we had to remove this this capsule that was in his tooth, I was certainly thinking of Leto from Dune. If you've seen either of those movies, you know what I'm talking about. So we get to see Scorch yet again in this episode, and I still can't get over how different he is from the Republic Commando video game and novels. In this continuity, he is all Imperial. I don't know for sure. They only mention him by name in the Bad Batch when you're listening to the audio description, but I don't think the rest of Delta Squad has been featured in the show. We just see Scorch. He's the guy who is on Tantus, and we see him getting in touch with, I think in some of the articles I've seen online, we call the second operative, the second shadow operative we're introduced to in this episode, CX2. And he lets him know, yo, the former operative has been captured. You need to find him. You need to neutralize him. And it's crazy to see Scorch not being the wisecracker in this continuity. He's so different. But I mean, it's I guess still Scorch in name only, but to me he's just a heartless commando who's commanding the operative here. And as for the second operative that we're introduced to in this episode, I've already seen quite a few fans wondering who this guy is. I see some folks think that he's Tech, some folks think that he might be Cody, some folks have noticed something on his arm. Now the audio description says that he's got a little wrist gauntlet, a little wrist device that he uses to press a button which closes his ship's ramp when he exits it. So I don't know if he has a scomp link like Echoes as well. I don't know who this guy is. If he is Tech, I don't know if we're going to be getting that reunification scene that fans want. I wonder if they would go a different way. If it is Tech, he very well could break his programming, because as he said at the end of season 2, whenever we ever followed orders, I mean, he could very well break out of that. Or who knows, it might be just some random clone. I don't know if this is the same operative that we saw in the first 3 episodes of the show. We kind of saw him coming and going in a few scenes on Tantus. Or, could be someone else entirely. But when he lands on Teth, he really goes to town. I'm also reminded of Slick from the episode The Hidden Enemy, because the first thing this guy does is, he targets all of the shuttles on Teth so the clones don't have a way off-world. He blows them up with his thermal detonators. And, of course, he does exactly what he's ordered to do. He finds the other shadow operative, the other nameless operative, who has been brainwashed by Hemlock. And this other guy, man, he starts chuckling as he hears the explosions, because he knows that, the second operative has showed up, and he's like, they're coming for all of you. And as he's laughing, just chuckling to himself, then he's taken down. We have the operative showing up, and he is blasted in the chest by the second operative. So the second operative is following orders to the letter, and it's a really chilling scene, because this prisoner, he's not at all scared to be taken out. He's got such a disdain drilled into him for his brothers at this point. He's glad that their base has been compromised, as he is meeting his end right before he's taken out by the new operative that shows up here. And when this guy, the new operative, speaks, I like what D. Baker does with CX2's voice. I don't know if it is Tech, but he's sure doing some things with the tone of voice for CX2. He's doing some things that, I believe we're led to believe that he's Tech. I don't know if he is or not, but I tend to wonder if D was directed to maybe have a little bit of Tech shining through auditorily when you do the lines for the new CX2 voice. So I really liked that. I don't know who he is personally. I'm just enjoying the story. If it's Tech, that's cool. If it's not, hey, maybe it's Slick, maybe it's Cody. I don't know. But when it comes to Omega in the episode, I like how she gets a new crossbow, a new energy crossbow. and we're not sure where Echo got it. I like that he says, "Oh, I've made some interesting contacts throughout the galaxy." So, I mean, I tend to wonder if we might be getting to meet that contact eventually. And my first thought was, "What if it's Ventress?" And I'm like, "Nah, come on, man. She's probably going to be in a flashback. It's not going to be her, even though the Night Sisters did use energy bows in the past. I mean, could be. I don't know." But I like her new weapon in this episode. So that was interesting. And we get to see a lot of interrogation scenes in this episode. Well, I mean, it's not in your face interrogation scenes. The clones aren't wanting to hurt this operative before he is taken out. They just want to figure out where Tantus is. But of course, the guy didn't talk. And speaking of clones, at the end of the episode, we are shown reinforcements that are showing up because, of course, Royce being Royce, he had somehow implanted a tracker in the first operative. So Teth has been compromised. And the clone that's speaking at the end of the episode, he wasn't identified as Wolf on the 80 track. I had to wait until the next episode to find out who that was. But I imagine there were quite a lot of happy exclamations from fans when they saw this guy at the end of the episode. I know there are quite a few Wolf fans on Twitter and YouTube and elsewhere. So I think it was interesting that he shows up in this episode. We saw him in Rebels, and we do know that he retires with the rest of the clones. But I like that we're seeing him here. He's still serving the Empire. He hasn't come to the realization that he needs to cut ties quite yet. So he's got his own squad, and he's ready to bring the heavy end of the hammer down on the clones that have defected as the episode comes to a close. So I wish that the audio description track had stated, Commander Wolf stands in the shuttle and he raises a hand or he looks toward his brother, something like that to let me know who that guy was. I mean, it's fine that I found out eventually in the next episode, but that would have been cool if they had somehow managed to squeeze in his name with the audio description at the end of the first episode, because it's him in the shuttle. I thought that was such a cool moment. It's fun to go back and actually watch it knowing that it's him as the episode comes to a close, because he has such an interesting history in the Clone Wars. He's lost an eye to Asajj Ventress, so that would be interesting if she does show up in the present timeline and she says something like, "Oh, by the way, how's your eye?" It sounds like something she would say. But having him show up really makes me wonder if we might see her in present. We kind of know she's coming in terms of possibly flashbacks, but I would love to see these two on screen together, because according to Dave, Wolf lost his eye to Ventress. I would have loved to have seen that in an episode, but yeah, that's why he's got only one eye. So I love his action figure. That's one of my favorites, by the way. So I understand all of the Wolf love. So can't wait to get into episode 7 next time. That's going to be Extraction. I hope to get that review up before the end of the week. The time change is seriously kicking my keister. We're in full spring forward mode on day 3, and it is. It's kind of rough so far. So I'm glad to be able to film this one. So if I've missed anything, hopefully I haven't. If I've gotten any little factoids wrong, I'm sorry about that. And I will hopefully cover what I missed in the next Bad Batch episode review, if I did miss anything that I wanted to talk about in the episode 6 review. So be here next time for Extraction. I'll hear you then. May the Force be with you.